Aloha, party people. You are listening to Inside the Desert Oasis Room, episode number 176. This episode is sponsored by the Tiki Bar T-Shirt Club, where their monthly T-shirt designs pay tribute to a Polynesian bar or restaurant from days long past. Each design is available for a limited time and will never be produced again. For more information and to check out this month's shirt, visit tikibartshirtclub.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by the Tiki Tea, a family-owned and operated tropical drink bar in Los Angeles, California. Come get their house specialty, the Ray's Mistake, for only $6 on Wednesdays until 9 p.m. For more information, check out their website, tiki-ti.com. On this episode, we chat with Bernard Yin and Rebecca Ramirez, the surf instrumentalist duo better known as Par Avion. Learn about their musical backgrounds, their influences, songwriting process, and hear about their latest collaboration with Mexican cumbia musicians Perro Agradecido, and how a chance meetup led to their latest project, Perro Avion. As always, I hope you enjoy this episode as much as we did bringing it to you. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider helping us with your support during this challenging time. Stop by desertoasisroom.com to check out our merch or leave us a tip. We've got tiki mugs, t-shirts, and pendants available right now. And any purchase or donation, no matter the size, is totally appreciated. It helps keep this podcast coming to you every week. Alrighty, grab a cocktail and join us inside the Desert Oasis Room and give it up for Bernard Yin and Rebecca Ramirez.
Inside the Desert Oasis Room.
Right on time.
Aloha, Bernard.
Aloha. Man, what a pleasure.
The honor is all mine. I appreciate you joining the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. And looking back at the many people that you have already spotlighted, it's mind-blowing. It's not to mention how beautifully you've coordinated your getting the word out. Whatever, like you said,
thank you.
iTunes, or direct from the website, and so on and so forth. It's wonderful.
Appreciate that. How are you holding up with all this craziness that's happening out here with the quarantine and the pandemic and all that kind of stuff?
We're doing better than we probably should be because we've snuck away and are hanging out at a friend's in the Sierra foothills in Yosemite.
Oh, okay.
So we're isolating, and we're also, using a lot of our free time to get into shape and go hiking. Rebecca and I like to fly fish, so we're fly fishing a lot. Very nice. And on top of that, we do have music projects that are sort of behind the scenes film and TV production stuff that we do.
Very nice.
In addition, yeah.
Oh, are you doing TV production too? Is that something that you do in your day job or your real life?
Not TV production itself, but we sometimes create music that is used for library or custom music. It's not our main thing. We don't do it all the time, so I'm definitely not going to brag about it. But it's a really cool and fun part of the whole musical picture of what we are.
Very cool, very cool. Let me start by saying congratulations on your new EP. Perro, is it Perro with? Do I roll the R? Perro Avion. Is that correct?
Yeah. Perro, you can roll the R or not, but of course that means dog in Spanish, and then avión, which means plane, both in French and Spanish.
Okay.
And it's just a silly blending of the names of the two bands that collaborated.
Yeah. I want to talk more about that with you in a minute, but first what I want to do is give our listeners a little bit of background about you and Par Avion, because I know that you've got a pretty extensive musical background.
Yeah, speaking for myself personally, I've been, beating my head against the rock and roll wall for quite a while, and I say rock and roll wall so that it's broadly defined. I'm passionate about so many different types of music that it has ranged from shoegazy noise type stuff in the 90s. I toured with a band called Medicine that some people know from certain cult circles, if you will, all the way to something eclectic and showy like Elvez, Robert Lopez. Yeah. So I toured for many years with him, and it would take quite a while to go through it all, but I cite those and maybe a few others in a moment as examples of just sort of the diversity of musical places where my passion for music has taken me as a guitarist. In more recent years, the fuzz tones would be a good example. Garage and Rebecca, who I do have here with me. How about?
Hey, aloha.
Why don't you share with Adrian your musical
journey? Well, I don't have quite an extensive background as Bernard does, but he basically taught me how to play the bass, and so I've been playing with Par Avion for the last 5 years, I believe, and it's been good fun. I enjoy the challenge of learning anything new, and it was a way for Bernard and I to spend some time together, doing something that he loved and I was interested in. So it's worked out well for us and our
That's
marriage.
Pretty cool. Yeah. So I'm curious, as far as a background is concerned, and for both of you, were you in like a musical kind of upbringing? Did you have family members that played music in the house?
Well, me and my family, we love music. I mean, we're Mexican American. You know, it's very much a part of our lives, our heritage, our culture. But I actually met Bernard through some cousins who moved from Texas, where I'm from, to LA because they were pursuing a musical career.
Oh, interesting.
And they met Bernard, and Bernard auditioned and joined their band. And so yeah, I guess if you include them in my family, which they're my cousins, then yeah, I have a musical background in that sense, and it's how I met Bernard.
Okay.
Through their band.
Yeah, and for myself, it was not a terribly musical background, although it was always sort of revealed later on, like, oh, did you know that your grandmother was actually a piano teacher? And you're like, no, I never knew that. You know, so. Yeah. One of those things where, at least in the case of my immediate family, my mother and father, they would just play records, and fortunately, it was quite a variety. So my father would, he had a weakness for, let's say, Johnny Cash, and my mother would listen to Edie Gourmet and the Trio Los Panchos, and these are things that are kind of, you wouldn't always think of given their heritages, because my father's Chinese and my mother's Greek, but born and raised in France. So,
interesting.
You know, and
yeah, I find the musical background thing interesting to ask when I speak to musicians, because it goes one of two ways. Either the musical background made such an impression and influenced them into following that path, or it drove them crazy and they don't want to have anything to do with it. There's like no middle road, you know? So yeah, that's what I find kind of fascinating. It's either one or the other. And I'm curious if the musical background that your parents had, or the types of music that they listened to, let's say that, did that influence you guys at all in the kind of music that you started to play in your band?
For me, my parents, they listened to a lot of oldies and like soul, Motown, and I mean, I guess a bit of everything. From my parents is younger, like the 70s and the 60s. And so I kind of grew up listening to that. And I forgot that I did play 1 year in like marching band when I was in 6th grade. I went to a private school and we were doing like parades and stuff. And my music teacher there, he had us playing like some funkier and I guess the like Sly and the Family Stone. I did have exposure to playing some of that stuff, but as far as what we started with Par Avion, you know, Bernard liked surf music. I didn't really grow up listening to it or anything, and it was a way for us to focus on our instruments only. Well, for me, because I was learning bass, and so that's for me why I started there. And I think now it's evolved a bit more where we throw in other influences. Not just the surf or but it's always kind of twangy, but it's not always like traditional surf.
Right.
I'd like to add that what's interesting about your question, and Rebecca touched upon it too, is that some of these influences are only now sort of kind of returning to the surface because of our ability musically improving and growing and evolving. And also an important aspect of what we do with Par Avion specifically is we really look for opportunities to embrace different genres and mix them up. We don't try to overthink it, but they're, you know, so they have to be intuitive and they have to come from the heart. So, you know, more recent material has included elements of, let's say, dance or
disco,
or even disco.
Right.
While the guitar on top of it could be Dwayne Eddy. You know.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, you think back to the 80s where, like, you know, Art of Noise did the Peter Gunn theme or Blondie did Atomic, which is a song that we cover. And, you know, it's not we're not going to say we're revolutionizing anything, but we're not the first to say, hey, what's wrong with a disco beat with a Dwayne guitar part on top of it?
Yeah. And I love that. I love when styles like that are, what do they call that? A mashup, or there's different terms for it. Yeah, but I love that. I love that, and you guys seem to do that well with this new album. Which, why don't we jump into that? Let's talk about this new EP. You guys are combining the surf sound with some Latin America sounds as well, and not Latin America rhythms.
Yes, it's a cumbia rhythm specifically. I can let Bernard.
Well, yeah, it's cumbia with primarily surf type guitars, and what's funny about that, and I'm like sort of like lifting the curtain here, or exposing our secret mixology formula here, but it's not really that. But is that back in the '60s, when the Peruvian cumbia bands were discovering wah pedals and echoes and all the psychedelic tools, they were developing what has become called chicha, and there's a little bit of a revival for this, and the surf community seems to be recognizing it as well. We're doing it just because it's ridiculous fun, but so it has become kind of one of the one of the feathers that we put into our cap as we perform or record. And to better explain how it happened, was I had done a festival in Mexico City about a year and a half ago with the Fuzz Tones, and I met some of the young surf musicians that are all over that city. There's quite a movement there, and we agreed to try and collaborate on some shows, which did take place February of this year.
Okay.
And they wof like almost overly ambitious in booking it up. Like, oh my God, in 7 days we've got 8 gigs. It's like I kind of want to like chill on that afternoon and go have a few tacos or go get a coffee. And I said, well, you know what? If let's leave that day open and just record something. And so we agreed on, and this is kind of cool. I suggest this to all musicians, and of course this was just a fortuitous event, but I mean, I would love to do this with any type of band whenever I'm traveling. But we said, okay, 2 songs will be, each of us will record 1 song of our own, and then collaboratively, we will all record and jam on one of the songs of the other, so to speak. And so that there are sort of variations within the collection. So one of the tracks on this EP is purely Perro Agradecido. One of them is Perro Agradecido song with all of us involved, and then one of them is purely Par Avion, and then another one is a Par Avion song with Perro Agradecido.
Oh, very nice.
So we kind of we created these different sort of formulas of how to approach the recording session. And for surf music fanatics, we were lucky to have on this tour Dusty Watson, who has quite a legacy in the surf community, and Dick Dale in the Garage World, the Sonics, Slacktone, his own band, which is really amazing. Yeah. Anyway, I'm rambling.
No, that's okay. That's why I have you on the show, right? Tell us all about this. I'm curious about Perro Agradecido. They're a young surf band, is that correct? The style of music?
How would you define them, Rebecca? Because there's some cool aspects of who and what they are.
I don't want to offend Sis or the other band members, but Perro Agradecido, they do. It's very much a cumbia band, but the way he plays his guitar, it's twangy. It's like reverb. He's like a surf guitarist, and he's combined the two. And from what I understand, that's what Perro Agradecido is. That's what they're doing.
Okay. But also, I think we use the word young when we mention them because it's so entertaining to to see people in their, I mean, some of the members I think are in their early or mid 20s, all the way into maybe early 30s, and that is
young.
I hate to say it, but that's miles behind me.
That's miles behind me, man. I'm in my 50s, so that's decades behind me.
And so am I. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
It felt like it's kind of like this reverse form of validation. It's like
right.
I don't know if I need to play with any of my heroes. I'd like to play with the young people who
they have a good vibe. It's a nice. I mean, I'm not much older than them. I'm in my 30s, but yeah, they offer a freshness that's. It's great to be around.
I find it interesting that the younger generation has picked up on surf instrumental guitar, because that's something from like 50 years ago, right? And they're influenced by a lot of those older guys, and also kind of the newer movement there. And I find it kind of cool. And of course, they're going to put their spin on it, and they're going to put their personality and their flavor in it. And it really evolves the sound. You know, it still has the traditional surf instrumental guitar sound, but with a modern flavor or with a modern feel. And we're seeing a little bit, of a movement there. More and more of these young guys are coming up, where you go to these surf shows and it's not just a bunch of old guys standing around watching a bunch of other old guys play music. Right?
So right there.
Right. So, and then what you guys are doing with them, like with Perro Agradecido, is something that's even adding even more of your personality and evolving it even further. And the music that you guys sent me, man, I love it. It's really, really, it goes so well. The styles go so well together. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I'm curious about the writing and the recording process of this particular record. I know that you said you had some music that you guys performed together. How did you guys write the music for that?
Right. So I would say there are, I don't know, 2 or 3 approaches that apply to this particular project, and that actually was a huge part of the fun. So in one case, for the song Muscle Beach, it was literally something that Rebecca and I just worked on casually prior to the trip, and meaning the trip to Mexico. And we did jam it a little bit with drummers here in California, and to sort of like get a vibe on like how fast it should be, and we essentially demoed it, I think, in Logic or even GarageBand or something. It was pretty simple.
Just a memo on your phone.
Yeah. In fact, one of the references for the recording was a voice memo on the telephone, just of us in the living room, so to speak, just jamming it. But we did develop, a form, because like within the tune there are a few little breaks and starts and stops and stuff, and then we just sent that to Sis, who's essentially the leader of Perro Agradecido, and he circulated it within his little gang, and he did essentially the same thing, conversely, by sending us a piece of music that we were going to partake in.
Okay.
And we left a lot of it up to spontaneity and trust, which was, I think part of the reason that there's that energy that, and it's almost like we're like a third party. We're like us, the musicians, like Rebecca and I. It's almost like we're looking down at somebody else doing an experiment, because it's one of those glorious things where I feel like we don't really need to take credit for it, because we can take credit for coming up with the idea,
being open to it.
Yeah, and being open to it. But the rest is about the beauty of music, and I don't think anyone would disagree. Is to try and not overthink it or get in the way of the spirit that music can convey and the vibe. And it was so refreshing too, because certain surf songs, for example, you can get together with thousands of musicians across the world, and you can say, oh, we're going to play Mr. Moto, and there's a 99% chance everybody's going to play it the same way. And
right.
There's nothing wrong with that, and a lot of people will, throw in their own little twists and turns, but there's a form, and we made sure not to get too heavy-handed with like, oh, you screwed up, you should have played faster in that one section. And we were re-listening to it the other day for, kind of revisiting the track, and we noticed things that the rhythm section was doing. It was like, oh, okay, so you decided to go there. I guess it really worked, because I never noticed it.
Yeah. So when you guys collaborated on this, I've got a few questions here that, as an outsider, I'm curious about when you write the structure of the music. Was it different than the normal structure that you used before, knowing that you have a different kind of genre that you're mixing in? And also, was there a language barrier between you and the other musicians?
Good question.
I will say that for us, when we were writing Muscle Beach, it was something Bernard and I were already doing, and then it turned out that it was going to be, I guess, the perfect song to collaborate with.
Okay.
The Perro Agradecido. And so Bernard and I, we listened to a variety of music, and we were kind of leaning toward something more like Latin influenced when we were writing Muscle Beach. So it definitely worked out that we recorded that song with them, but it was something that we already had in mind. Like, we were going to sort of lean that direction. In the B section, my bass line is definitely something that would be compatible with a cumbia rhythm. So, and I wrote it purposely that way before I even knew that was the song we were going to record with them. It was just something that we were playing with, and we wanted to try to do.
On a more technical level, and to maybe add to an answer to that question, there was a lot of room. It's not unusual for an instrumental band to have more than one guitar, so it was pretty easy to also communicate in advance, like, okay, on this part it'll be a little bit more in favor of you doing the solo versus me. And when we were actually recording, we did record it, I would say 99% live, so to speak, versus, of course, like, oh, we're going to track the drums, and then we'll come in after lunch and we'll do the bass and guitars. It wasn't built step by step. It was a good old fashioned, everybody in a room together, standing in a circle, playing their instruments. And so it wasn't too hard either to, like, there could be a moment where I would strum a chord and I would just point to sis, indicating, almost like a jazz band would do or something, like, it's, hey, take it away, blow some sax.
Yeah.
So it was kind of fun to have that kind of thing. And in fact, the timbali player you could tell, was almost nervous or awkward in the studio, and you almost had to remind him when it was his time to, like, take the spotlight. Like, dude, go crazy. Right. Come on.
He was a good player, but he was a little bit reserved.
Yeah.
But and maybe also when you asked about the language barrier, he speaks great English, and so we could easily communicate with him. And Bernard and I, we both speak
hablamos un poco.
we can speak a little Spanish. So,
I speak,
that was really helpful.
I speak tourist Spanish, so I know enough to get by and enough to get in trouble. Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was curious if there was a language barrier that may have affected the creative process or the collaboration or anything like that. So, but it doesn't sound like there was.
No,
I don't think so.
Yeah. So let's talk about the timing and the release. It's kind of a weird time to release an album. How do you release a record in the middle of a pandemic?
Right. Yeah, I have no perfect answer for that, because in a perfect world, we would have gotten our act together with, getting the song uploaded to the DistroKid so that it would go onto Spotify and all that stuff. All of that's ideally that would have happened a lot sooner.
Right. Right.
Even though we literally were coming back to California after this trip to Mexico, just as the whole pandemic situation started to get ugly. We're talking early March, and then there were some classic rock and rollisms, like the engineer guy who ran the studio was more of a musician in a sort of humorous, stereotypical sense than we were, because he was kind of flaky. He was drinking throughout the whole recording session, as in hard liquor, and it was kind of comical. Had a little bit of Spinal Tap in it, and for all we know, he could have circled back with mixes and materials for us to run with much sooner as well. But we also figure, we could just keep overthinking this, or let's just get it out there, and maybe now's as good a time as any, because it keeps us all keeps our spirits up to hear some good music and remember when we all got together in a room and got crazy, and hope that it happens again.
Yeah, I look at that group photo that came with your press kit, and man, I could feel the chemistry in the photo. Everybody just looks so, you could feel the vibe just looking at that photo, and I got to say, the music that you sent me, I wish there was more than 4 songs. I mean, it's really excellent. It's really great. I really,
and we're
really
dying to do it again. And and we've got some fun ideas. Like, I don't know if it'll really happen or how we will chew on it and spit it out musically, but like do a cover of El Chicano, Tell Her She's Lovely, that hit from like 72 or 73, because it has dual guitars, but it can be infused with a lot of Latin percussion. But of course, focusing on originals too, we really feel like we could sort of take what we've started and blow it up into a kind of a fresh subgenre.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you have something there. So if you were working on Muscle Beach before you even did this with Perro Agradecido, I have to read that and make sure I say it correctly. I think you have something there, because it's something that is fresh and different, with still, again, as we talked earlier, with still that kind of that traditional sound, right? So, and it keeps the music interesting. So, I think you have something there. Are you guys planning on doing another project together at all?
You mean with Perro Agradecido?
Yeah.
Yes, we're dying to.
Yeah, I would. We've discussed an album potentially. We don't know when or how.
Yeah.
Know any of the details yet, but we felt like what we did in the studio that one day, it's like, wow, we could really make something. So maybe an album.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more from you guys. And the thing is, just kind of right now, the timing is just, it's weird. I mean, like, it'd be awesome to see you play the music live, and then especially with the new EP out. But that's right now, that can't happen, right, with all of us in quarantine. And then it also puts on hold this kind of momentum you guys have with Perro, right? You guys could have just continue to do more music, but right now we're all kind of in a holding pattern.
No, you are correct. And we're always looking for an excuse to go to Mexico, and it's
sure, me too.
and right, and we're far from the first California-based group of musicians, or musicians in singular terms, who've called Mexico a second home. Danny Amos of Los Straitjackets has spent tons of time down there. That's just one of Johnny and Davina of Human Drama, going to a whole different genre. Mexico's it's a world that has embraced his music much more than anybody in the United States. And it's interesting how seductive and attractive it is to I'm sure there are other places,
Oh, I love it down there. I was just down there too in March, and yeah, we went down there for my wife's birthday. And when we flew down, the airport was busy and packed. The plane was full. We were down there for a week, and when we flew home, the plane was only 1/3 full. It was 2/3 empty.
Wow.
Yeah, because things had changed in that time, And when we got back to LAX, it was really, really slow. There was no traffic, and I think within a week, maybe 5 days, less than a week, they had put everybody in quarantine. So we had just gotten that trip in.
Wow.
Yeah. I can't wait until this whole thing is over and we can go back to our normal lives. So
it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Skull and Crown Trading Company, located in the historic Chinatown district of Honolulu on the island of Oahu. Skull and Crown is Hawaii's premier exotic destination. Enjoy delicious island favorites and classically crafted cocktails in their mysterious tiki room or their enchanted courtyard. For more information, visit them on the web at skullandcrowntrading.com or follow them on Facebook or Instagram at Skull and Crown Trading Co.
You and I actually have a Philippine connection. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. No, let's talk about that. So tell me about that.
Well, quite simply, I was born in the Philippines. I was born in Manila.
Oh, really? Wait a second. I think you mentioned this to me before in a message of a few years ago.
Yeah, way back probably.
Okay. So I'm not going to ask you when you were born, but we might possibly have been born pretty close together because I was born in Manila too in the 60s. So.
Well, for me, it was 64, February 29, 19.
Okay. Oh, you're a leap year baby.
Yeah.
So when do you celebrate your birthday? Do you celebrate that on the 28th of February or March 1st?
Whatever the convenient weekend night is, I guess. And we this year, the 2020 was a leap day or a leap year. Year, and so we celebrated it. Part of the reason we did this run to Mexico was to celebrate my birthday in Mexico.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. There's a really good part of the story where the night before the recording session, and you might want to add this. I was just buckled over with food poisoning, and I've been to Mexico many times and never had the classic stereotypical Montezuma's revenge.
Yeah.
I got clobbered, and we actually had a gig that night. So I was like curled up before going on stage, vomiting in the most disgusting little restroom, jumping on stage, played a set, and then barely made it back to the Airbnb to just pass out.
Do you remember what you ate?
We sort of we did a process of elimination.
Okay.
We think it was a bowl of beans.
Okay.
Like charos beans.
Okay. Now, when you ate it, did you know that it was bad? Did you if you think back, you know what, I think it was this because when I ate it, it tasted off.
No, but it was the only thing that Bernard and I ate in common. And for a moment, during the night, I kind of felt like I had an upset stomach, but I didn't eat nearly as much as he did. I only had a few spoonfuls, maybe one or two, maybe just a couple. And everything else we ate in common. And, I was fine. And my sister and my brother-in-law were there. And my sister ate one of the same things we ate as well. And she didn't have any problems.
Okay.
And so we're pretty sure it was that charos beans.
What's your birthday, Adrian?
Okay, so my birthday is 9/11. 9/11, 1968. I shouldn't laugh because it was a tragic day for a lot of families. But 9/11, people say to me, "Oh, I'm sorry your birthday was 9/11." And I always respond, "Don't feel sorry for me. I'm still here and there's a lot of people who suffered a tragedy that day, including our country. But I was born on 9/11, 1968, which really was just an uneventful day until 2001, right?
Right.
But came here when I was 3 years old. So
That's how old I was.
Yeah, and I grew up in Southern California, and you know, my dad used to listen to a lot of surf music because that was when he was young. Right, he was born in 41, so in the 60s was he was in his 20s, and that was what was the popular thing to listen to. And in the 80s, I got a lot of his records, and I was influenced by his record collection, and I enjoyed, you know, and that's why I look at these young guys of this generation today and wonder how they were influenced, because, you know, that was their dads are probably my age, you know, so God, that's scary to say that.
No, I know. Do you have kids?
I do. I have a son who will be 21 in a few months, and I have a daughter that I have a daughter that will be 18 next month. So yeah. My daughter, she just graduated high school last month or 2 months ago. Yeah, I was kind of bummed for her because of the whole, you know, quarantine thing. They did she didn't get to experience a traditional graduation ceremony. And of course they didn't have a prom, and she missed out on grad night because they didn't have a grad night and all the things that come with being a senior. But, you know, the graduation was pretty awesome. It was a drive-through graduation, and we were in and out of there in 10 minutes. So we didn't have to sit baking under a sun for an hour waiting for her name to be called. So what about you guys? Any kids in the house?
Our fly rods, our instruments.
Yeah, our guitars are our kids. So
that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I assume that as musicians, you know, you play guitar and bass, but is there anything else that maybe you enjoy playing that maybe most people wouldn't know?
Oh, well, I'm a hack at it, but I have a theremin.
Oh, really?
And I actually need to get that thing out of storage because I want to record some kind of Halloween type stuff for both for kicks, but also for potential licensing uses. But I dabble in lap steel and ukulele and acoustic guitar. I don't deviate too far from there. I don't play trumpet, for example, or not even harmonica, but I love the philosophy of different instruments sort of talking to each other or having a relationship. And I know that, I don't know whether it was a bunch of just lip service or just trying to be impressive in a show off. But I think it was like Richard Blackmore of Deep Purple used to say he preferred listening to saxophone players to get his musical ideas. I forgot, it could have been Jimmy Page, but it was one of these guitar heroes from the UK and I get that. And I think Carlos Santana used to always say, I think of what I play as somebody singing. Like, I'm in my head, the guitar is coming from the same circuitry as if I was a good singer. This is what it would sound like.
I used to play piano when I was younger. And it helped me learn to play the ukulele because I played piano for several years when I was younger. And so I knew my scales from the piano. And when I applied it to playing stringed instruments, everything clicked for me. And I thought, so this is the scale, right? So this is how the scale looks on the fretboard versus how it looks on a keyboard. And I've heard that professional singers apply the scale in the same way in their heads, and which is, I'm not a singer, so that's a little bit more of a foreign concept to me, but it helps me understand what you're saying there, because if it's all relatable, right? The way that music is music.
Totally.
Yeah. So the way that it crosses over from one instrument to the next, and when you look at like a vibraphone. I never understood it at first. How do they know where to put their mallet? But then I started seeing the flats and sharps in there, and I thought, oh, it's just like a piano keyboard.
Right.
So,
Do you play vibraphone?
No, I don't. I don't. But I have friends that play, and so I would ask them questions. And then when they started pointing things out to me, oh no, these are the sharps and flats right here, and then this is your standard scale. And then when I looked at it, I thought, oh, so I can see the piano keyboard now. I totally see it. So if you know how to play piano, you can basically translate it or transfer it right over to the vibraphone. The vibraphone.
Nice. Yeah. I get it. And without digressing too much, but to sort of toot our horn, in our early incarnation, our Par Avion's drummer was DJ Bonebreak from X.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
As you may know, he's actually a pretty cool vibraphone player.
Yeah. And, so does he play? I mean, so that's the thing too, is that, if you're playing vibes, you have to understand that, and not to discredit drummers, but it's just that it's a different kind of instrument, So, I don't want that to sound like I'm dissing drummers or anything, but when you look at a vibraphone, you're actually looking at notes versus pads, right, or skins. Yeah. So yeah.
I like him more as a vibraphone player than a drummer too, by the way, but that's between you and me.
Okay. And everybody else that's listening.
Yeah. It's he'll probably be happy to hear that, actually. He's an incredible sense of humor. That's helped our band a lot. We've been blessed by a lot of amazing drummers. We've had of course
helped me.
and a lot. And what's interesting about Rebecca is she, if I could brag about her, is she understands the spirit and the groove and the pocket of music. So even if she's playing just one note, she's playing it in a good place, not too fast, not too slow. And so even early on, when you would say, oh yeah, Rebecca's a beginner, and yet we would have these hotshot drummers, not once, and they were all really good friends of mine, and they would have said, hey, you know what, before next rehearsal, could you guys work on that thing a little bit more? We never got that, because even if she's playing something simple, everybody was able to lock with her, and that was kind of a cool
yeah awesome.
There was one thing I was thinking about, and you and I we've touched upon it a little bit in this conversation.
Okay.
But, like we're transplants, we're immigrant kids, and part of this tiki culture and surf culture, I don't even have anything conclusive to say about it, but it entertains me, as long as you don't get too critical, how it's sort of a funny collision of cultures, because you think of, the ukulele, of course, was a Portuguese instrument, but now you can't help but think of it as something that's iconic of Polynesia.
Right.
And like you and I, I'm a Californian through and through.
Sure,
I'm a surfer. I know California inside and out.
Sure.
I speak surf lingo better than anyone.
Sure.
and yet I'm this cultural train wreck that came to these shores, and I have a soft spot for tiki culture and Polynesian kitsch. It's an interesting thing about this whole community, and everybody seems to be on the same page about it.
Yeah, I mean, growing up in Southern California, and I'm just like you. I grew up surfing out here. In the 80s, it was all surfing to me. The 80s, that whole decade was all beach to me. And that translated to tropical lifestyle, which translated to, the tiki stuff, right? And it all was all encompassing with the surf music and the tropical imagery and the laid back lifestyle and all that. That was all part of my youth and how I connected to all of that. And the thing about tiki is that, it draws people from so many different backgrounds. People find tiki through surf culture. Maybe they find it through the cocktails. Maybe they find it through the music. Maybe they find it through mid-century preservation architecture. Maybe they find it through hospitality, through the hospitality industry, or they find it through some kind of an art movement. Maybe they enjoy lowbrow art, or they enjoy advertising, like, classic vintage advertising art or whatever. And Tiki kind of touches all of those different things, right? And so
that was beautiful. You summarized that so brilliantly, and you just reminded me of a story that I tell this story pretty regularly. But I first met Otto from Tiki Oasis when he was just starting to throw little backyard backyard tiki parties here in Mar Vista.
Yeah.
And I met him because I would go into used record stores, and in addition to whatever I was looking for, let's say an old Jefferson Airplane album, I would also take a dip into the international section with a focus on Hawaiian and Polynesia and genres of Micronesia, South Pacific, whatever. And Otto, in his punk rock way, would put flyers in between records at the used record store with his phone number, saying anyone who's interested in tiki culture, tiki mugs, Polynesian music, call me. Okay. And I mean, it was almost as simple as that. And it was totally clandestine. Like, he went into a record store and without telling the owner would be putting these flyers in there.
Now, I knew he was leaving flyers at the record stores, but I didn't know he was putting them in between the records. That's genius.
It was totally genius. And I said, oh my God, this guy's my best friend already. And that was, I don't remember when that was. It was so long ago. But
that had to be 90s.
That was years before the first Tiki Oasis.
Oh, yeah. First Tiki Oasis was 2001. And he was doing those parties back in the 90s. And so here's the thing. I was already doing the Tiki thing back then. I probably started collecting in the late 80s somewhere. I want to say like 88, 89, something like that. Oh, I didn't know I was collecting. I was just buying the stuff that I liked. And then it was after a few years I realized that I had a collection. And that was just because every time I saw something at a thrift store, and I would go to thrift stores to buy clothes. I was looking at clothes. I wasn't looking for tiki stuff. But if I saw something cool, I'd buy it. And a lot of it was tiki stuff. And here's what kills me is that in the 90s, there was a small little group of guys that Otto hung out with, which was Sven and a few other guys that were doing the whole tiki thing, right? Jeff Berry was part of that group. And I didn't know those guys back then. I met Sven, I think, in either 99 or 2000 when he was still writing the Book of Tiki. And I met him at Oceanic Arts because he used to borrow materials from them, brochures, menus, that kind of thing, postcards, for the book. And
oh, my God.
And as a Tiki guy, I used to go to Oceanic Arts all the time to buy stuff, right? Tikis and decor and all that kind of stuff. And I met Sven that way. And I remember being really excited about the Book of Tiki, waiting for that thing to come out and thinking like, man, when are you going to finish this thing? And apparently it became a joke within their social circle because he worked on it for almost a decade before it got released. And I wish I'd known those guys back then because I was kind of a loner, doing this whole tiki thing. And I remember my sisters used to make fun of me. They used to laugh at me and, call me obsessed, call me crazy and all that stuff. And and I actually started to believe them because I didn't know anybody else who had the same obsession as I did. So
that's cool that there was a little bit of a parallel universe and you didn't have. I mean, you're to be admired for having gone it alone, so to speak.
So I'm going to say this. So this is what's crazy to me. So we were in Mexico at the same time this year. We were both born in the Philippines, in Manila, in the 60s. We were both into tikis, probably frequenting the same record stores in the 90s. How have we never met before?
I know. And I was going to say, we probably were at one or two parties at least that we didn't even realize.
Yeah.
I know.
And for our listeners that don't know, I've never met Bernard in person or Rebecca. It's only it's just this kind of stuff, right? Talking on Messenger on Facebook, or texting each other, or talking through microphones for the podcast, but we've never met in person. So
I think we had a nanosecond run-in at Tiki Oasis where
you
were doing
You're right.
one of your broadcasts, and you just said, if you can make it down to this area, I'll
You're
be
right.
broadcasting as well. And I couldn't do it.
You're right. Yeah. Wow.
But that's about it. That's the extent of it.
Well, we're going to have to change that. We're going to have to change that after this whole pandemic is over. And I'd love to come out and see when you guys play, whenever that next thing is, or even just get together and have a drink together.
I'd be so into that. And do you still surf? Because I surf.
No, I don't. So, okay, I'm going to tell you how this whole thing ended. And I'm not going to blame my first wife, but it was because of my first wife. So, so what happened was, and it's not her fault. What happened was, when we got serious and we settled down and started a family, we moved pretty far inland. I live in Eastvale, which is in the Corona, Ontario area.
Okay, right.
And I just found less and less time to go to the beach and get a surf in once we had a family. And over the years, I would try to get out there and get in the water, and it was less and less every year, like I said. And one year, as we would move and I would scale my stuff down, because she was a minimalist. She hated that I collected all this stuff. It was all just clutter to her. And so it was always like, oh, okay, I'm not using this. I'll just sell it, and I sold all my boards except for one. It was a custom board that I had made for myself. And I hung on to that until I was somewhere in my 30s, and I had laser eye surgery done. And the eye doctor who did it for me is a friend of mine that he took up surfing in his 40s, and as a leisurely thing to de-stress from work. And as he really got into it, and I at that point wasn't really surfing at all anymore. It had been a few years since I'd been in the water. He gave me such a break and did such a good job with my laser eye surgery that I gave it that custom board I gave to him as a gift. So
that's sweet.
Yeah, so I don't even have a board right now. So so it's been a long time since I've been in the water. So
it'll be a nice tropical drink then when we can for crying out loud.
Yeah. I'd love that. And I'd love to host you guys over here too at the Desert Oasis Room. I'll make you a cocktail. Maybe we'll barbecue or have some food, whatever. I think it'll be fun. Where are you guys based out of, by the way?
Great. That's incredible. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Where are you guys based out of, by the way?
We live in Santa Monica.
Okay, so LA area. Yeah, and even there, how come we haven't met in person yet? Right.
Well, and we can, Dusty lives in Corona, so we could recruit Dusty with a snare and some brushes, and we could do low volume silliness in the Desert Oasis.
Oh, I'd love that. What we should do is I'll have you guys over. We'll have drinks. Maybe you guys can play a little music, and we'll do a live feed from that. We'll do a live video.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah, we'll have some of our listeners enjoy it remotely. Well, before we wrap up, I've got a couple quick questions for you.
Sure.
Let me ask number one. Other than surf music, what are you guys listening to today? What's on your playlist?
We are in this Sierra Nevada, right? So we do a lot. We've been doing quite a bit of driving into the national park and all that. And there's this genre of Brazilian music called choro, which is like a classical music, and also some samba, and recently as well, we've been listening to quite a bit of like some of the Motown, like soul R&B and disco.
We can't help but listen.
Yeah,
almost once a day we'll listen to the dance version, the extended version of Diana Ross's Love Hangover.
Oh, I love it.
Which is just the juiciest, sexiest,
it totally
piece of music
is.
on earth, you know?
It totally is.
And Rebecca doesn't know this, but I was listening to the first Van Halen album yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, see, I like that too.
So there are a ton of little guilty pleasures. I was sitting down, we get just this tiny bit of Wi-Fi signal next to this creek by where we're staying, and I was down there the other day at sunset just relaxing, and I was listening to Surrealistic Pillow, the early Jefferson Airplane album, the one with White Rabbit and Somebody to Love on it.
Okay.
But it has a lot of other songs, and Jorma Kaukonen, the guitarist, actually has like a weird rubbery, surfy guitar style, and I just love his playing, and I love that album, and I'm a sucker for 60s, Haight-Ashbury era psychedelia. So even if it was Top of the Pops, because in that case that was essentially a pop record because of its success. But so that's a little variety for you.
Yeah, I was going to say
a cumbia playlist as well. I mean,
Yeah, I love the assortment of genres there. I love it. A second question for you before we wrap up. What is the future of Par Avion? Do you guys have anything planned for when the pandemic is over? Any touring shows, music, anything like that?
Well, I hope I think we'll start to play live again once it's safe. Obviously, this year out the window. We did have quite a few shows, before everything shut down that we had to cancel. We'll be writing new music. I'm sure of it. I know it.
Yeah, I think what she said, of course, is correct. But we were setting sights on a year of California. Like, we wanted to do a lot of California gigs. We were already set to do something at Forbidden Island through Tanoa. Right. Otto was going to have us back at Tiki Oasis. The Pike in Long Beach, the bar and restaurant that's run by Chris Reese, has been one of our favorite little places to play for just because it has so much vibe. And we had this beautiful little schedule starting to mature, and versus other years where we've been a little more ambitious, like, let's go to Europe and play some shows in Spain or do something in France, which we've done. We've played a little bit in Europe, and although it's incredibly fun, including Lorenzo's Surfer Joe Festival in Italy, and we love all that stuff, but it's an incredible amount of work. And the sad thing is that it actually detracts from making the music. It's not that we don't like doing it,
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that.
By playing domestically, it makes it easier.
All right. Okay, last question. If people want to get this new CD, where can they get that?
It is now available at all of the basic outlets for digital, and we will be pressing a 7-inch with
very nice,
a 33 RPM 7-inch with 4 songs on each side.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah, that'll take a few weeks at least, but right now the iTunes, Spotify, all of the basics.
It's only available for streaming. We haven't put out any CDs.
Okay.
And the best way to find it is actually with the project title, which is Perro Avion, Perro Avion.
And we'll also put a link. We'll put a link down below for all of our listeners to it in the description, so people can click right to it.
Well, Adrian, you rock. I really enjoyed this, even if you accidentally lost the tape. This was a total blast.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed it too. And as always, I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to speak with us at Inside the Desert Oasis Room. And thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, my man.
Thank you so much, Adrian.
Yeah.
Mahalo.
Mahalo. Cheers, everybody. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Cheers and aloha.